One fighter that I think is quite underrated, that a lot of boxing fans don't really mention much, is actually Sergio Martinez. Back in around 10 years ago, Sergio Martinez was like one of my favourite fighters to actually watch. The thing I loved about him was the fact that he used to have a style with a lot of flair. He used to fight with his hands low, and he used to depend on his reflexes and his hand speed to actually win fights, and I used to find it entertaining to watch. If you look at most fighters that are like of Argentinian descent, like for example Carlos Monzon, who else was there, like Marcos Maidana, all these fighters like Carlos Baldemir, all these fighters, they were usually fighters that were quite good technically, but they didn't have a lot of athleticism. Like they weren't fighters that used to like throw like them, they weren't like the fastest fighters, or the fighters that used to throw the most punches, or fighters that used to hit the hardest, or they weren't fighters that depended on the athleticism more than their actual technical ability. But the thing I loved about Sergio Martinez was that he was a fighter that used to actually do that. In my opinion, in his prime, he was probably one of the most avoided fighters at the time, because he was so formidable. He was a fighter that he was very fast. He had power. Remember the way he knocked out Paul Williams in their second fight, and on top of that, he was a fighter that very unorthodox. He was southpaw, and he used to fight with his hands low. I actually think in his prime, I think he would have given Mayweather fits. I mean, I think there's a reason why Mayweather did not want that smoke with Sergio Martinez at that time. Sergio Martinez, there was a time when he was actually formidable and scary, when he was going through his tear, and he beat Paul Williams, and then he beat Kelly Pavlik, and then at that point, obviously he also beat Chavez Jr. And at that time, obviously everyone sees Chavez Jr. as a bit of a joke now. Wait, excuse the police sirens. Everyone sees Chavez Jr. as a bit of a joke now, but at that time he was on a bit of a tear. He was a WBC champion. On top of that, I think he beat several good fighters. And obviously Martinez, apart from that brief scare in the 12th round, he beat him quite easily. I think he would have gave Pacquiao a hell of a fight as well. And I think there's a reason why them fighters never wanted to fight him, because not only did he have the speed and the power to match these fighters like the Mayweathers and the Pacquiaos of the world, he was also bigger than they were. That he obviously went up to middleweight, and obviously, like if you look at Pacquiao and Mayweather, they went up to light middleweight, but even they were like, you know what, they don't want the smoke with Sergio Martinez. I think Sergio Martinez is one of the most underrated fighters of this era, and he's one of them fighters that probably doesn't get as much respect as he deserves. To some extent, he was a bit of an unusual fighter. He's a fighter that took up the sport late as well. I think he the first time he walked into a boxing gym was the age of 20 when he first walked into a boxing gym. So this is a fighter that obviously he was an athlete. He was a bit of an athlete because he used to play football, and he used to play soccer in the United States. He used to play all these other sports, but he never got into boxing until the age of 20. I mean, that's a pretty late start, and for him to be as athletically gifted as he is, despite the fact that he started so late, it shows a lot about his tremendous talent. So yeah, I think Sergio Martinez in his prime was very formidable. I think he would have gave a fighter like Golovkin fits. Obviously there was a time when nobody wanted to fight Golovkin when he was on his way up, but if you take Sergio Martinez in his prime and you take Golovkin in his prime, who I think would have won? I think Sergio Martinez would have just outsmarted him, outpointed him. His hand speed, his power, his reflexes, his unorthodox style, all of that would have been absolutely difficult for him to deal with, and I think he would have actually beaten Golovkin quite handily actually. So yeah, in my opinion, Sergio Martinez was one of the most underrated fighters of his era. He was definitely one of the best fighters of his era, and he was a fighter that never got the true recognition that he deserves. So I just think it's good for me to make a video just to reference him. When he was in his prime, he was one of my favorite fighters to watch. He was very entertaining to watch, and I think if he was around today, if he was competing, I would have loved to have seen him fight Canelo. I mean, imagine a prime Sergio Martinez versus Canelo. That would have been a hell of a fight. I mean, that would have been a fight for the ages. And I think I might actually go for Martinez to beat him, because Canelo, even though he's become an incredible fighter up to now, I think Martinez I think might have I think he was faster than Canelo was, like more explosive. He was more unorthodox. I think Canelo would have struggled with his lateral movement. I mean, we saw the way he struggled with Erislandy Lara and all these other fighters. So I think he would have struggled with the likes of he would have struggled with the likes of like for example Sergio Martinez. I think Sergio Martinez would have quite easily have handily given him fits with his speed. I mean, there's a reason why the likes of Pacquiao and Mayweather didn't want that smoke with him. I mean, he was absolutely formidable in his prime, and I think he would have given them like a field day in terms of like how good he actually was in his prime. So yeah, that's my opinion on Sergio Martinez. What's your opinion? Do you think he would have beaten him? Do you think I think, for example, do you think Sergio Martinez would have beaten the likes of Mayweather and Pacquiao, or do you think he would have struggled with them? Who do you think would have won if they were to fight each other? It's obviously it's all hindsight now. We'll never know, but I think it's fair to say that I think Martinez in his prime was an absolute animal, and I think he would have gave many fighters fits. If he literally just apply, I think if he could have got the right opportunities at the right time, I think he would have beaten the likes of Mayweather and Pacquiao. I just got a feeling that he would have been a bit too much for them. So yeah, that's my opinion on Martinez. What's your opinion? And tell me who if you think he would have given Canelo a good fight, or do you think Canelo would have beaten him quite handily? Tell me what you think below, and like and subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot more content coming your way. Peace out.